Hello, and welcome to Ask an Optician. My name is Larry, and I am a dispensing optician, here to answer any questions you might have, either that you didn't think to ask when you're in with your doctor, or that you should be asking in person your local experienced optician, but just can't get in. And hopefully, together, we will bring you a knowledge base. Always remember that you are your own best advocate and that knowledge is power. Ultimately, the professionals should know what's best in your interest, but the more that you have at your disposal with regard to knowledge, the better off we'll all be. So, with that question in mind, no, I cannot do an exam. Well, I can do an exam. I have been trained in how to operate a phoropter and how to manipulate trial lenses and such. But I am not an optometrist. I am not an ophthalmologist. I am an optician. Together we make up the 3 O's of eye care professionals that should be at your disposal. But I cannot do an examination. So let's take a look at what the difference is. I'm not entirely sure which doctor you see. They could have an OD after their name, in which case they are an optometrist, or they could have an MD after their name, in which case they are then an ophthalmologist. So, according to a few different organizations, please forgive me while I read, ophthalmologists, and I quote, are eye physicians with advanced medical and surgical training. Ophthalmologists complete 12 to 14 years of training and education, including medical, and are licensed to practice medicine and surgery. Typical training includes a 4-year college degree followed by at least 8 years of additional medical and surgical training. An ophthalmologist diagnoses and treats all eye diseases, performs eye surgery, and prescribes and fits eyeglasses and contact lenses to correct vision problems. All this is from the American Academy of Ophthalmology. Now, optometrists are, and I quote, the primary healthcare practitioners of the eye and visual system who provide comprehensive eye and vision care, which includes refraction and dispensing detection and diagnosis and management of disease in the eye, and rehabilitation of conditions of the visual system. This is from the World Council of Optometry. Fairly cut and dry. What it boils down to is an optometrist refracts day in and day out. An ophthalmologist typically does not. They know how to, they are able to, but most ophthalmologists defer to their technicians. I'm assuming, I've not discussed this with them, and hopefully we'll get into some manner of interviews and discussions with medical doctors of eye care. But ophthalmologists will typically have their technician run the phoropter and do the dialing in of the refraction and then sign off on it. There are still ophthalmologists that perform their own refractions. An optometrist is not necessarily going to be any more accurate, per se, than the technician or the ophthalmologist. But typically, the technician for the ophthalmologist is a student that is not to denigrate in any regard their expertise or their capabilities. But what I have seen is on occasion when there can be a refraction, either error, be that transposition of a plus or minus sign that should have been the opposite, or dialing in somewhat incorrectly, or dialing in correctly and then noting incorrectly the prescription. And doctors do it as well as technicians. We do see more of that happening with the technician. We don't see it with any frequency, but it does happen. And so, Either an optometrist or an ophthalmologist or their technicians are licensed to perform a refraction. The doctor has to sign off on it. From what I understand, most of the optical shops throughout the U.S., where you would go and purchase frames and lenses and sit down with an optician, or in some cases a frame stylist, most of those are owned by a doctor or doctor's group, or it's a retail shop within a doctor's practice. Where I happen to work is actually optician owned. There was a period of time where there was a doctor that practiced within the building, but we are optician owned. And as such, we cannot perform, although we know how to, we cannot create a lens based on a refraction that we have performed. It has to be done or signed off on by a medical doctor, be that the MD or the OD. With regard to optometrist and ophthalmologist, as I was saying before when I was quoting from the different organizations, an ophthalmologist is trained in surgery of some nature. They typically specialize at a point. An optometrist does not perform medical surgeries per se. An optometrist can prescribe certain medicines. An ophthalmologist can as well. An optometrist goes to a little less school and then, of course, doesn't have any manner of residency, whereas the ophthalmologist goes to a longer term and goes through a residency. And so it just depends on what your needs are. If it is simply dialing in a refraction, or if you've been unsatisfied with the refraction you've been given, go see an optometrist. They can usually get you in a little bit more quickly than can an ophthalmologist. And usually, because of the volume of refractions that they are performing, are able to dial you in accurately fairly quickly. Often, too, depending upon where the location is. And I should note that in addition to the doctor-owned, you have places like Lens Crafters and such that has a doctor within that is ostensibly an optical shop with a doctor. It is not owned by an optician. It is owned by a conglomerate, Luxottica. And we'll get into frames and Luxottica. Some of you may have questions about the special that ran in 2012 on 60 Minutes with regard to the volume of frames that are produced by and for Luxottica. At any rate, the 3 O's, I am one. I am an eye care professional. I am not a medical professional. And as such, if you seek advice with medical regard, please locate your nearest optometrist or ophthalmologist, or if you have a favored local experienced optician, ask them for a recommendation for a doctor. Thank you very much, folks. We'll be back next week. I hope all is well. Clean your glasses. Take care of your eyes. We're coming into some beautiful weather around our country here in the U.S. Please wear protection of some nature as you get out and about. I see so many people that have developed cataracts because they didn't take care of their eyes when they were younger or throughout the course of their adulthood, and only in their later years, or at least later experience, have they come to find out that, yes, sunglasses are a benefit. Or different materials can offer full UV protection, and we'll get into that as well. Take care. Thank you.